You are going to introduce yourself to include the pronunciation of your name, but I was absolutely riveted by your recent approach to me with an email about fractal democracy. So before we get into fractal democracy, please just tell us your name and a little bit about yourself and how you got to today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Mikael Cromsjö, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here and excited to tell you a little bit about these fractals that I'm working with. I have myself been active with studying and doing research about the deep state for about 16 years now. And this is more or less what my conclusions for how to make a solution to our current problem lies within this organization method that is the fractal organizations.
But what country were you born in? Tell us a little bit about your early life that brought you up to today.
Well, I was born in Sweden, Stockholm, and always have been a little bit skeptical about society. I had this feeling about society that something was basically a bit strange about it, something wrong. So I invested a lot of time as a child with computers and being in my own subculture, you could say, a little bit away from society. And it was not until I was about 25, I'm 41 now, by the way, I kind of woke up to the deep state introduced by actually some documentaries by Alex Jones at the time. And that totally shifted my attention from my own little bubble to go out, and within 2 weeks I actually started an online forum, which was the first forum in Sweden that was discussing these kind of topics.
That's absolutely great. All right, so we have agreed on several questions, and the intent of these questions is to allow you to frame this. And I want to stress to my viewers that this interview is not intended to be comprehensive. It's intended to introduce you to this work so that you will then go and learn more. And we'll have your URL at the end of the interview. So let's start with, what are fractal organizations?
Yes, the basic things here is I will take my my notes. It's basically, it comes very close to what you are what talking about open source intelligence. It can be used to organize any kind of group, but in my case, I've been developing this to be able to make a network that everyone can go in and organize information. But it also is a system for organizing people, for making different kind of activism and so on. And basically it's a tool to be able to mine information in a larger group in a society. Today it's very difficult because it's so much noise, very difficult to sort this information. So the fractal organization is a way of mining information within crowds and using the crowd themselves to very fast get the information and filter the information, organizing it so then you can act on it very easily. And basically, in the way I'm using it, it can be used in any kind of organization or company for optimizing the way we interact with each other. But I've been using it mainly as a method of creating a common strategy for addressing the problem with the deep space. And it's many of the key things with the fractal organizations is that it's optimized in way of speed, but also to minimize the possibility for different people to go in and inflate the whole of the structure by corruption, threats, or infiltration in general. So it's an optimized system for open source intelligence. This is my take.
Well, now you've told me that group size is important. important. I still don't have a grip on what a fractal organization is, but we'll circle around to that. Let's talk
Mhm.
about group size. And if you were to create a fractal organization group tomorrow to discuss, say, a public health issue, how would you go about it?
Well, with the fractal has this. The basic principle of a fractal is that you take a big problem and then you divide it into equal small chunks, and every chunk will then have a very. It's not so complex, and that's why one little chunk is just a group of 6 people. That's like the basic circle, and it's within this group that you work and you vote on information and so on.
How many?
And
How many in a chunk?
it, you can use different sizes, but according to research, a group of about 5 to 7 people is the optimized group size for making decisions and also to act upon the decisions.
That's
And
very, very
I think
interesting because seven is the number for chunk memory also. People can
uh,
hold 7 ideas in their head at one time. That's very interesting. So we're talking about cells of 7 citizens, a little citizen wisdom council of 7
yeah,
dealing with a particular slice of a bigger problem. Now, how do the bigger problem links get put together?
yeah, exactly. This is the thing. Well, usually when I work, I use 5 people in a circle if you want to have an action group, because 5 is an uneven number and it's very small. Obviously, you can also 7 people, but 6 people, it's then you get the equal number, and then that
Right.
creates a little bit of a. It's good for discussion, I would say. But personally, I use 5. Um, can you tell the question again? I got a bit off.
No, that's right. So you have 5 people, and let's say you have 50 groups of 5 people. How do the
Of course,
groups then come together? How do
that's
they
the
cross fertilize?
that is the thing with the fractals. You have groups of, let's say, 6 now. We have groups of 6, and you create 6 group of 6. You have 36 people, so you have 6 groups of 6, and you have one subject that you want to uh, uh, go deeper in. It could be a question, and for me, I usually start with the question: what are the top 5 problems that we need to focus our effort on to get this out? So all of the 6 groups discuss this by themselves. So when they have done the discussion, and 6 people are quite many, you'll be surprised how much information you will get from a group of only 6 people. But when you have come to a order of the 5 most important issues, you choose one person in the circle to represent the circle in the larger system. So this should be someone who is good at representing this information and someone that you trust. So from each of the 6 groups, you will have one person that's representing each group, and they will go together and create a new circle. So there will be, again, only 6 people in a second level layer. And this layer will then discuss the results from the local circles, and again, talk about, discuss, and make a new filtration, you could say, or a new um, they vote and they make a new list of what is the most important for the overall system. And then this can just continue. So you have the base level, you have the first level, you have the third level. And for each level, the total size of the network increases 6 times. So for every time you do a new iteration, you will be able to have 6 times more people. So it's quite easy in very few steps to incorporate uh, any amount of people. Actually, the whole earth can actually go into this kind of network where everyone is actually contributing with only a few steps. I don't know exactly how many, but maybe 8 or 10 steps, and you will already be able to have the whole earth sharing
No,
information.
I've heard about similar concepts in the past, although they weren't using the term fractal. And so, in
Mhm.
theory, within 1 week, an entire country could discuss an issue. And this is different from the Danish concept of the Citizen Wisdom Council, where 12
Uh,
people are selected as if they were a jury and then they are given complete access to everything, and their deliberation is then accepted as final by the legislature.
Yeah.
So you've created a fractal organization. How is it working for you? Give us an example.
Well, you can use this system online to answer question, but I've been working online also. I'm developing a platform where you can use this, but you can also use it live, and that's how I most of the time have been using it for small gatherings. Let's say you gather hundreds of people, and you have a common mission. Let's say you're even in a or demonstration, like say we're the Yellow West or something. We're on the street and there's a lot of people. How can we rapidly organize? And then we can actually divide everyone into small groups, and within hours, hundreds of people can have a common understanding. And the question could then be, what should we meet? Where should we meet next time? And what should our main topic be next time? And this do very fast.
Who decides? I mean, one of my friends is Harrison Owen, who is the inventor of open space, and I'm hoping to interview him and Joan Blades and Peggy Hallman here real soon, because I'm on this path that I just started with Tom Atlee, kind of retracing my steps in understanding. I'm a covert or clandestine human intelligence specialist, but I want now to shift. I have been shifting toward overt, legal, ethical human intelligence. So when you've got 100 people, do they self-select into groups of 6, or does someone assign them? How do they decide what division to take?
Now I don't follow totally. What can you rephrase the question?
So there are 100 people. How do you divide them up into 6 each? Do you tell them to count off, or all men over here, all women over there?
Actually, it's a dynamic system, which also means that this structure will repeat itself. You will create new fractals for each question, basically. So it's not a stable network that will not shift, but instead the networks will recreate. So it doesn't really matter too much how they will be created, but you can, for example, in the beginning, you can have just a free thing. Everyone goes together with a group with people that they have a good connection with. So you just let it happen like this. So let's say the first question is, what are we going to do in the next meeting? So you discuss this, and then you might come to a conclusion. Yeah, we're going to go for making a special manifestation. And then the next question is, okay, how are we going to make it? How are we going to do it? And then people who are builders might want to go together in clusters. People who are computer scientists going together in their circle. Because in the end, when you create this fractal, it can actually be used as well as a means of organizing the whole implementation. Because when you have a structure like this, it becomes very similar to a traditional hierarchy, except that in this fractal, you will have trusted people on each level. You will have a chain of command, so to speak, with the people that you trust the most. And when you then decide to do something, every circle will be given a specific task. So each circle can then be specialized in different fields.
What I hear you saying really is that this is a form of liquid democracy in which trust is used. And I'll let you respond in a second. But the other thing that I'm hearing you say is that this is not only a way of studying problems and making decisions, it's also a way of implementing and even policing or overseeing the fulfillment of the decisions.
Exactly. It's quite common to the liquid democracy in a way, but exactly, it also has this capacity of working as a management for the whole deployment of a thing, because on each level you will have a representative, and these representatives are people that you trust, and these people then, let's say you have a mission, you're going to do a new manifestation about some issue. So in the top, you discuss this. In the center circle, you will discuss briefly what, of course, you will have a big session first, what to do when you mine all the information. So the center circle already have all the information, good information. And then they say, okay, let's do it this time, let's do it in this way, da, da, da. And then they separate all the different tasks to each of the arms. So there will be 6 different groups in the top, and they will divide the different responsibilities. And the representative will be finally totally responsible for that this task will be happening. And this person then gives and divides this again in 6 new pieces. So it will continue to divide all the way down until every little cell of 6 people will have the knowledge and the information and everything, and there will be someone who are responsible for it to happen.
Let me ask you what may be a challenging question. It's been my experience that most of what we're being told is a lie. Most of the media sources, most of the scientific and medical sources, even most of the government sources are not telling the complete truth. And generally, even if they tell the truth, you're only getting 1 to 2% of the relevant truth. And you're not particularly getting multinational, multilingual truth, for example, from China, from Iran, from Russia, and so forth. How does a fractal organization address the issue of accessing truths that are being hidden?
Well, this is really the need, why we need to have something like this, because of that the mass media is totally controlled, and we cannot know, even in the alternative media. I think it's a lot of the alternative media is just from the deep state. They're just flooding the field, taking every possible take on everything and just twisting it all directions just to create this sense of confusion. But I also noticed that individual people have a quite good sense of finding their way and finding what is true and false. But the ones who get it, they don't have the possibility to reach a large audience. But if you have these fractals, the good information will be found and it will be filtered, and the good people will be filtered upwards or inwards. So you would be able to get a very honest report of what is actually going on just by the common sense of each individual.
I think you're onto something there. I'm really now beginning to see the sense in which an organized group that trusts itself can basically smell the feeling in the fingertips, good information, and then you now have a Linux-like organization for pushing the information out. Well, you asked me to ask you about corruption. How do fractal organizations protect against corruption? And you've partially answered that.
Yeah, that's very important. And it goes back to the size of the group again, because the best, most efficient way I see that the propaganda is pushed forward in mass media and so on is to work on fear. And it's really, to me, it's the fear of being excluded of the group. So basically, you're using group psychology. You're painting a picture where either you're with them or you're against them. And then most people just line up behind a strong winning character. So it's more important how strong you look than actually what kind of information you have. And this is created very early. Let's say if you have like 5 to 7 people, you have a group. But if you have 8 and more, it turns into a mob. And this mob mentality takes over. And it's that way that the infiltrator works. You have a group of 1,000 people, and it's enough to have like 6, 7 infiltrators that back each other up in a clever way, make it look like they are special, and everybody else will be quiet and just follow this group. So this is the most important thing. And also, which is the same, is that when you're a small group of 6 people, you will be able then to sense who are the psychopaths, because basically everybody kind of feels who are using them, but they're afraid to act. But when you're in a small group, you will have a much more sense of intimacy, so you will feel more safe to speak up. And even an old lady could actually say like, well, I don't really like you. I don't want you to be the representative of the group. And in this way, it will really take away most of the infiltrators. Actually, you will need to have
So let me ask you this question. Let's say John Brennan is a member of a small group and everyone identifies him as a psychopath,
yeah.
speaking hypothetically. So do you stamp a large P on his forehead so that others will know, or does he have to be re-identified as a psychopath in every group he tries to infiltrate?
No, actually, in my way of seeing it, we need to assume that everybody is infiltrators, but we should point our fingers to none. That is, everyone will be accepted. The psychopaths, we will invite them to our groups and we will let them stay there, but they will, by natural feeling, never get through more than maybe one layer. They will stop on the low layer. And it's the same with all the trolls, all the people.
You're articulating a very Christian, gentle way of dealing with psychopaths. We're letting them feel the love, but we're not letting them represent us going up one or more level. That's absolutely fascinating. Now, in our final question, you asked me to ask you, how can fractal structures help to carry out projects and activism? And this is going to be our last question. Although I will say that when I post this, I'm also going to post the complete written text, plus the URL that you sent me, and this will bring people to you. Some ideas are too complicated for me to actually get involved in myself, but I think you're onto something here. It's a very important part of the whole continuum of citizen activism and wisdom councils and liquid democracy and smart nations and so forth. So I'm very, very pleased that you reached out to me. So how can fractal structures help us all carry out projects and activism toward what I think is our shared goal, a prosperous world at peace that works for everybody?
Yeah. Well, my longing is that this system would eventually replace our democratic process, because most of the democratic processes today are basically, there's a few candidates that's already pre-picked in some way and you can only choose from them. It's like perfect group psychology situation. So the first step is obviously to use these kind of groups on the side or as complementary to original normal structures. So for example, you could create with all the members in, for example, let's say you're in Greenpeace or someone other group, you can take and involve all the members in a fractal that would then complement the hierarchy that's already in place. And then it can use it's like a lobby more or less, that you influence the group to actually represent the members. And in this way, it can continue to spread, and it can be used as a union in work unions. It can be used in every different situation where you want the people or the members to be represented in a fair and just way. And basically, when this has happened, when we have a system that is so big so we can actually put pressure on democracy itself, we could see this developing that we actually change. I think the whole world's democracy today is not at all real democracy. So I think the next big step, which probably will happen not exactly now, but in the future, we'll have this shift where democracy will seem to be very Stone Age, and the new system, which I think will be some kind of a fractal system, would really make it possible to make a world that is very fair and just. So also I see that this system, obviously it should be a democratic system, but I also see that it should be the banking system. The banking system of the future should be based on this kind of decision making as well. And I also see that this kind of system also becomes the new media, because, yeah, well, basically that's the first thing. We create a channel for good information. So the media, the bank, and the democracy process will be replaced. And I don't see any limit to this, because it's like a self-going, stabilizing, balancing system that can bring us to the future that we want to see.
This is very interesting. I gave a lecture to the University of British Columbia. One of the things I included in the lecture is the fact that the tetrahedron is the fundamental organizing principle of all life. And my own personal motto is the truth at any cost lowers all other costs. And I was inspired in part by Ben Gilad, whose book Business Blind Spots remains epic. And he points out, he quotes the CEO as saying, until you get the truth on the table, no matter how ugly it is, you're not in a position to deal with it. So I think you have given us a lot to think about, and I will post this with all of your text and a pointer back to you, and let's see what happens with that. Let me also say that I really like Sweden. When I ran my first conference in 1992, Dr. Steven Dediger from Lund University showed up with a Swedish delegation. And I actually called the Swedish embassy to say, how do I say, welcome Swedish delegate? But Sweden has always been a smart country, and I wish you well. And I thank you very, very much for reaching out to me. Please just say goodbye to everybody, and we'll stop there.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure indeed.
It's my honor. Bye-bye.